It's a pleasure to be on this call with some individuals that, just I have a great deal of respect for in our community. Minister Elijah Anthony of the Roosevelt City Church of Christ and Minister Daniel Carrington at the Palisades Church of Christ. And of course, if you're a part of the Homewood family, you'll recognize my esteemed colleague, our outreach minister, Willie Chrisman. And so, Willie, thank you for joining in. But Brother Elijah, how are you doing today?
I'm just fine. Thank you so much, Brett. Blessed. Better than I deserve.
Well, we so much appreciate your voice in this conversation. Daniel from Palisades, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Just happy to be able to spend this time with you guys and hang out for a little bit and listen more than I talk, hopefully.
Willie Chrisman. So Willie, thanks for joining us today.
Don't ask me how long I've been in the ministry, Brett. That's a sensitive subject.
Well, a few months ago, the four of us participated in a prayer retreat. And at that time, we thought it was preparing us for an event, the Racial Unity Leadership Summit here in Birmingham. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, what I've since discovered is that maybe we were being prepared for a journey rather than just an event. And I think many are curious in light of the recent events that have occurred in our country and in our communities. Does the church have something to say about these recent events in our country? And so, as Daniel said, I'm also wanting to listen today as well. So, Brother Elijah, why don't we start with you? How would you respond to that? Does the church have something to say about what's been going on in our nation?
Certainly. I think that we cannot afford to be silent. We cannot afford to sit on the sidelines. And what I've been talking with the Roosevelt City family about for the last month and a half is helping us to figure out what our role is and where we can be of service and just what are the scriptural dynamics that direct us during times like this. So I've spent a lot of time focusing on Romans 8:28 because I think all of this fits under the general umbrella of all things working together for good to those who love the Lord and who are called according to his purpose. If we don't believe that, that is the beginning of some problems, because it is crucial to our being able to live in this world as Christians.
For me, step one is to get people out of politicizing a gospel issue. And I'm not saying this is a political issue and it's a gospel issue. And sometimes when that politics stamp gets thrown on it, people want to just run the other way. And I think it's refocusing people to understand this is the gospel. This is, there's a reason that the end images that we have of new creation is a great coming back together of race and nation reconciling, because God foresaw this issue, and it's a gospel issue to be part of the people who bring about that reconciliation here on earth as we await for him to reconcile it all one day, obviously. But the church's mission is still God's mission. We join in his mission, and we can't avoid this. I think
this journey that we take with the Lord, it comes complete with hardships and trials. As a matter of fact, to this we were called, Paul says. I don't know what we think we were called for, but Jesus says through Paul, to this you were called. What? Tribulations, trials, pain, and when we look back, things that have meant anything to us have always come out of civil unrest, protests. When Jesus and Paul went from city to city preaching, the first thing they did was start some unrest. That's where change happens. They went straight to the synagogue and preached to people that they knew were going to be the antagonist. And yet they went. And it's that caused us. So when you put it in the context of being clothed with Christ, I think that all begins with Matthew 16. Jesus says, if any man will come after me, let him first deny himself, then take up his cross. The cross in the context is the cross that comes with denying self. And that happens every day, every waking hour. We have to deal with the question, am I going to do what I want to do, or am I going to do what the Lord wants me to do? And so the scriptures tell us really the solution, the answer to that problem is by becoming this new person that we become at baptism, putting on Christ in all of his elements, the meekness, the kindness, the Colossians, you know what I'm saying? And that's the savior of the world there, that we, in the midst of things like this, times that we're going through, that we're able to display to the world this outfit we have on that's called Christ Jesus. I told them as well, there are two outfits we need in our closet. Ephesians 6, the whole armor of God. And 1 Peter 5, we need to be clothed with humility. I think it all begins there. And the sad thing that I'm recognizing is that many people in their desire to give their lives to the Lord really didn't stop to count the cost. And to me, these are some of the extended, hidden costs, if you will, of discipleship. You don't realize how much you need it until you're in it. You know, but one thing is for sure, if we're clothed, we're ready for any situation. If we're clothed with Christ, we're ready for any situation. So that's the chore. That's the cross every day, to think about even when I get up, where am I going today? What's going to be my environment? Because that will decide how I appropriately dress, not only physically, but spiritually. And of course, I'm clothed with the Lord, but there's some things that need to be more prominent based on my environment. To be clothed with Christ is to have at our disposal all of those qualities that make it possible for us to go out and live amongst others and yet not be changed by them, because we've already been changed. We're already this new person. And without being clothed with Christ, we're naked.
There's definitely a cultural shift happening. And if the church is not involved in that discussion, we're going to become irrelevant. We're going to not be the place people come to try to find reconciliation. And ultimately, we all know that the reconciliation really can only happen within the church and at the foot of the cross.
Biblically based. I think that it goes to the heart of Jesus' teaching. As outreach person at Homewood, my responsibility is to try to reach out to others and try to touch other people's lives. And the tenet that we go by that is what is called the second greatest commandment, to love our neighbor as ourselves. And the other tenet is the one that we learn from childhood, which is what we call the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So in this moment, how are we treating our neighbors? How are we bringing compassion to this? If we are people whose children can't get a decent education, how will we respond? If we are people who can't get decent health care, how will we respond? How will we engage with others to make that happen?
I experience it too, but thank God I have the solution that the scriptures have given me, so that when I start thinking foul, there are scriptures that the Spirit reminds me of who I am. And that helps me to get through the day. Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you.